Yeah, so as I said before, we will have a talk again in English. And so when it comes to logging and monitoring in OT environments, not all sources are created equal. Some are structured and easy to use, others are incomplete, and some are nearly impossible to work with. And so based on real-world experience in the energy sector, our next speaker will show us practical strategies for making sense of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Please welcome Philipp Kreimel-Haindl from OMV Exploration and Production GmbH. Hello, nice to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks and welcome to my talk. As already mentioned, the good, the bad, and the ugly of OT log sources, where I spent lots of time in the latest months, years, and so on. When it comes to logging our OT. So let's get into it. Short introduction. So where do I come from? As most of you here, I also studied at FH St. Pölten, and I just saw the presentation from my former colleagues from Limes. So this was my past, and currently I'm at OMV, so mainly responsible for, of course, NIS, because we are a huge organization, let's say, in Austria, and driving OT security towards our compliance in energy. Also set up an OSMS, which is an IT, similar to an IT-ISMS, just for OT, to manage all the risks that we have. Now, let's come to this setup. As we have heard lots of talks, I threw out the slide explaining what OT is, because at this point we should all know. And so our OT and the systems and the networks, they are the backbone of critical infrastructure. But when it comes to security and especially logging, so knowing what's happening on the systems, they are still like a black box. It's lots of things we still do not know, and some of the challenges, the current setup we see, we have lots of legacy systems, of course. If we get logs, then they are mostly more on the operational side, and not really security focused. And sometimes we don't even get any logs at all. And on the other hand, big topic are also vendors, which actively, let's say, block the integration of systems or logging which do not comply with their systems, or, for example, with the integration of external SIEM systems and so on. So the main challenge is we want to achieve meaningful visibility of of course, our critical systems, to know what's happening, and there we need to navigate the organizational, technical, and of course the organizational challenges that we have. And for this, we want to have a look in this presentation. So let's meet our characters. Basically our logs, or our log sources, our systems, from where we get our logs. So for one, we have the good, we have the bad, and we have the ugly. So some examples here. The good, yes, they do exist. So those are logs that we can actively, directly work with. And then we have the bad, where we only have, for example, partial visibility, or rather painful integrations, or sometimes no logs at all, or the vendor, for example, blocking something. And then we have the ugly as well, as you can see. Yes, you get something, but what you get is not something you can actually work with. It's borderline impossible, or you need some crazy workarounds which are hard to maintain to actually get the logs and work with this. But we will see some examples here as well. So we will not start with the good, we will actually start with the bad. So the bad, the logs that make you work for it. So one of the most important things here, or one of the biggest challenges in OT we face, are vendor restrictions. Of course, every vendor, we usually have their own solutions. And there's also, I think, I have another slide here. every vendor, may it be ABB, Amazon, Honeywell, Siemens, Honeywell I already mentioned, whatever they're called, Amazon. They all have their own, usually their own managed service or software which they offer, and they do not allow any other software, which of course has certain reasons because of warranty liability of the systems. But mainly, security is a huge market now, and we all know, we saw in the previous presentations, with all the attacks happening in OT, management, people becoming aware, so there's lots of talk in media and so on. So all these vendors, they also know there's money to be made, and those systems they offer are quite expensive, to say the least. And the problem is, in OT, it's usually, especially if you're a larger company, larger organization, you do not have only one vendor. Because, for example, you do a tender, and then this one vendor is cheaper than the other. I mean, if it comes down to the price, then you will have two different vendors, and you cannot end up with two different themes, or even 3, 4, 5, because this will again drive the price up. So these are some of the problems which we face. Some other things, vendors in an OT systems, those are quite complex systems, controlling a physical process. So every bit of software or a piece of software that is on there is checked by the vendor. So if you come now with your agent, maybe an X-log or whatever, they will usually say, no, we do not test this. Because of warranty liability issues, we cannot allow you to install something on the system, because you bought the control system, and we guarantee you that it works for the years in service, and you cannot just install whatever. Then we also see limited log support, and logs in OT. They usually exist in a control system. Everything is logged, every action, everything, but it has an operational focus, because if something breaks in the plant, complete shutdown, or maybe even a safety incident, all these logs are gathered and then checked, what happened. For example, if a piece of a piece of hardware broke or whatever. So all these vendors, they spent lots of time in the past, creating this, but not really looking at the security. So this is. And with the legacy systems we have in place, because we also heard OT, we are thinking not in years, we are thinking in decades, 10, 20, sometimes even 30 years a plant is running. So we have lots of legacy systems in place which do not support any logs. Let's come to the bad. Unreadable by design. So let's see, we have a system and you get some logs, but this is what you get. Just some binary dumps with no structure or documentation. If you talk to the vendor, what is this? I don't know. Where this comes from. Then you look at the application from the system. That's the source. I don't know. So it's quite difficult. And yes, you have the logs, but it's not usable at all. Or maybe there are logs, but those are in some databases where you have no access. It's also oftentimes we see this. And of course, legacy systems with no log support at all, unfortunately. Now let's come to the ugly. It's not as bad as no logs, but those are the logs that barely deserve the name. Why? For example, here we have a controller where you can download a system dump. You access via HTTP. You can download a system dump, and in the system dump you then have XML where everything is in there, and there's a section called logger where you can see the latest logs. It's nice that it's in the XML, but the way towards a theme would be rather complex. You need to set up something that automatically downloads it, extracts the XML. No, let's not do that. Other things I saw or had the pleasure of setting up is, for example, quite a complex setup where the vendor said, yes, you can have our logs. It's a Windows-based control system, but no installation of anything. You have to use the onboard things. And we all know with Windows, WEF or WEC, oh, it's a pain to set up, especially since this control system has its own domain, of course, yeah, and you have your domain, right? Then you need to want to make it secure. So this WEF forwarding must be done via HTTPS. So now we need certificates. Okay, trying to set this up was rather difficult. First, getting everything to the WEC server, so it has an actual connection. Yeah? Then you need the certificate. Then it said it needs to check the certificate, of course. Yeah, it cannot just accept the certificate without checking it against the CA. So we need another firewall port opening here. So this is super complex to set up, actually, and especially in a production OT environment, you need to maintain this stuff. Yeah? So, for example, the vendor comes and updates the control system. Do you think that this will still work? Of course not. Yeah. So you have to maintain it, and yeah, with this, the logging becomes actually a project in itself. Yeah, and the more you connect, the more you set up. Yeah. It really takes lots of effort, and then you really start to think, yeah, does it really make sense? Yeah, is it worth the effort? Yeah, for the logs you're actually getting from the system, which is, let's say, quite limited anyway. Yeah, that it to actually make sense of it. Yeah, and in the end, what do you actually want to see? Yeah, you want to see a potential attack. Yeah? And during a control system, access is super limited anyway. Yeah, so there are only a handful of people collecting there anyway. So yeah, it's always difficult. Yeah, to check here what actually makes sense and how much you want to invest for what you actually get out. Yeah, then we also have some other ugly logs, which are readable, yes, but are they actually usable? Yeah? So, for example, we have this example here. If anyone knows from which vendor this is, yeah, I will get the next round. There's a keyword in there which you can look for. So we get some logs. But yeah, they are quite difficult to integrate, rather, because as you can see, it has no structure at all. So what do you need? Yeah, you need to write custom parsers. Of course, again, those can break with every system upgrade. Maybe they change the application sending the logs. Maybe the vendor changed something. Yeah, because usually this information you only get after the upgrade, and your theme receives no more data, or the parser is not working anymore. Then, of course, as previously mentioned, you get lots of logs. You need to filter out really what is relevant for you. And if it's not readable, that's also difficult, because this log, it could have interesting information. Systems talking to each other, maybe it's just a TCP connection. Yeah, with no IP address in there. Okay, maybe we don't know if it's interesting. So lots of time and effort you can actually put in there. And again, the ongoing maintenance then can also be quite time-consuming here. For example, also if new software packages are installed or new log formats, especially in OT, previously it was not that bad, but nowadays updates are coming more often, and the vendors, they also, for example, go to the next Windows Server version, or go to the next Linux SLES version or whatever. So things are changing, and they are changing more often now. So here again, we have the effort versus value, which is oftentimes quite questionable. Yeah, how do we cope with all these bad and ugly logs? So some techniques that you can use to actually survive it. Of course, you always have the passive collection, put some spam ports, tabs, IDS sensors, but especially if you have lots of plants, those things also can get quite expensive, especially if you use commercial products, because usually you buy per sensor, and every plant is usually in its own sector, so buying a sensor for every plant, again, quite expensive. And with all this network security monitoring and so on, there's also a bit of the downside. Encryption, it's coming into OT. It rather slowly, but it's coming. And you will see later another device, for example, which also supports now lots of encryption. And some of the vendors, their internal protocols, talking, for example, from the SCADA servers to the controllers, it's encrypted by default. Yeah, you can put a sensor, but for what? Yeah, you will see just encrypted data, maybe see who's talking to who, but in a control system, it's quite clear usually who talks to whom. Yeah. So in the future, this will also be quite interesting how encryption here plays a role. Yeah? And for example, controllers are also adopting now all these open source protocols like OPC UA, which you can also run encrypted. And here the support is also starting. But again, slowly, yeah, there are still lots of vendors, lots of devices with no encryption at all. Yeah. Yeah, you can also use protocol converters on certain devices so that you can take the vendor-specific logs and actually put it into a meaningful syslog or JSON so that your team can rather easily work with it. Or use ETL pipelines, yeah, as mentioned, an Xlog, because sometimes the vendor, yeah, if you have an agreement, or at least for certain systems, they allow you to, for example, install some of these tools, like an Xlog, and it normalizes your data by default, yeah, and it sends it to the SIEM, so you can immediately work with it. But again, you need some creativity and patience here to actually make those OT logs quite usable. Yeah, let's come to the good. Yes, it does exist. Things are improving, let's say, and quite a positive trend is that OT manufacturers or vendors, they start following secure development life cycles. For example, I'm not sure how many know the IEC 62443, so there are certain parts, especially the -4 part, which is targeted for the manufacturers. Yeah? For example, the -4-1, secure development life cycles for products, software, everything. And lots of especially the big vendors for their new products, they have certifications already. Yeah? So their devices, they have at least some kind of security capabilities, and especially when it comes to logging, this helps us a lot. Yeah? And for example, modern devices, they now support standard log forwarding, yeah? Like immediately syslog and not some system dump downloads like we just saw. And yeah, we have modern firewalls, industrial switches, next-gen PLCs. All those immediately support syslog, and which you can directly send the logs to. As you can see here, things are being better, but it always starts with the processes. Yeah, so the vendors, they need those processes in place. They need the certifications so that actually we get the products to work with. But again, things are slowly improving because, as you heard previously, if I set up now a plant with certain components, yeah, those need to run for the next 10, 15 years, and we won't change it. Yeah, so we will not see those things for at least sometimes. But for every new plant or system you're setting up, usually you should look for those systems. Yeah, some example. So this is a state-of-the-art RTU, a remote terminal unit. So oftentimes, or mostly used in the energy sector and for energy automation. And they have a nice white paper where you can see this is the section for event logging, and it supports standard syslog. And yeah, what can you log? All the interesting things like login failed from users, user accounts created. That's a bit similar like the Windows logs, for example. But quite interesting here are these logs, the system diagnostics and control operations, because those usually you do not have on a Windows server. So for example, if the firmware changes or an active control operation is being done via this system. So it influences the physical process, for example, opens a switch or whatever. And yeah, this list is quite long actually. And now again, we have the difficult thing, we get all these logs, now we need to prioritize, because we cannot put an alert for everything. We really need to look at, okay, what is interesting for us? For example, a configuration change, you get the log, of course, if something happens on the system. During normal working hours, could be completely normal, right? Some engineer from this company went there, put in some changes because they needed it, or put a new firmware because it was available and so on. Completely normal. But what happens if this config change happens out of business hours, let's see at 10 in the evening or in the middle of the night. It could also be legitimate because there's something broke, and the vendor, which we usually have an on-call service, drove there or remotely connected and did some changes. So again, you always have to check here. But this is currently some of the challenges here. Looking at these logs, how you actually get these logs. So yes, all the systems support syslog, but it's not quite as easy. Yeah? For example, I think most of you probably work somewhere in the IT world, yeah, where you have all these fancy log formats like CF and whatnot. Yeah, you just log from your security device, maybe Fortinet or whatever. Yeah? Everything is fine, standardized, no need to touch. Yeah, this is the log you get from the RTU. Yeah, it uses, for some reason, pipes as a delimiter. Yeah, whoever came up with this. Yeah, so in this case, you need then a parser which extracts the information needed. Because with this, you can then only look for keywords. But what we actually want is this. Yeah, we want a nice structured JSON, or this context JSON. Yeah, could be whatever format. Just so that, for example, the theme can actively search through all this data, and we can do fancy correlation and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah, and this is an example here, and where, for example, this in this parser we look for the application name, which is the specific application this RTU actually sends the logs from. Yeah? But here again, let's just hope no firmware upgrade actually breaks this, yeah? Because then you again have to touch your parsers. Maybe some of the fields change. Maybe it's less information, more information. So let's just hope this stays the same. Yeah, just some architecture example. When it comes to all these challenges we have, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you actually need a hybrid approach, because just buying the commercial theme from every vendor is usually not a good option, because then you end up with 4 or 5 different themes not really talking to each other. Who maintains this? Yeah? Who operates even this? Yeah? So this, for example, an architecture where you have here on the bottom, I think Purdue level from 0 to, in this case, 3, also quite known. On the bottom, you have all the OT systems. From the PLCs, for example, SCADA engineering operator, whatever you can integrate, integrate. And in this case, for example, we have a plant with a level 2.5 where the syslog forwarder is being placed. So all the systems here sending the data to the syslog forwarder, and then the syslog forwarder forwards it to the central theme log management system, whatever you want to call it. Then we have some other systems where, for example, here the syslog forwarder is placed inside in level 2 because of certain restrictions of the RTUs directly talking to this device and not talking directly, for example, to the theme. Just so we have some kind of segmentation here as well. And of course, here on the left-hand side, we have another, the WEF setup, yeah, with the Windows-based systems, which you also want to integrate, of course. Yeah? And everything comes together here. And also some central services, of course, where you log the remote access and everything. And then the main work starts actually here on the top, where you then start to correlate all this information. Yeah, some of the things which you always face when it comes to logging in OT is the human factor and the politics. Yeah? So technical thing is the one hand side, but there are lots of organizational things as well. Yeah? For example, the operations teams, the people running the plant, yeah? So they are only focused on availability and safety, of course. No harm to people, and the system needs to be up and running 24/7, because if we don't make any money, of course, or the power is out or something. So logging is usually seen, yeah, it's nice to have, but do we really need it? And then come all the security people and talking about NIST and whatnot. Yes, we need it. Then the vendors which resist integration. And in pretty much every organization I've seen so far, there are usually these organizational silos that OT and IT staff are not really working too well together, because they also have different priorities. Yeah? So if we want to have success, we need to involve security early in design, and this is really huge. And in the next slide, I will show also an example. And we need to build trust with the OT engineers and also show quick wins. And quick wins could be, for example, and this is what I also saw, if you connect all these systems via the SIEM, you often find misconfigurations. For example, there was a logging daemon on some system that for some reason in the middle of the night rotated the logs and multiple times. So everything was rotated and resent into the logging engine, which made no sense. But the log management system actually set up an alert because there were hundreds of root logins, failed root logins in the middle of the night, but it was all one log actually. But it was somehow resent into the system. And other things you also find. And then you talk with the people, hey, I saw this, does this mean something to you? And then you find potential misconfigurations. Because usually in OT we don't see too often these attacks or whatever, so it's oftentimes misconfigurations we see. Yeah, some of the lessons learned, this is very important, plan early or pay later. This RTU you saw, the syslog server, the IP address of the syslog server, which it sends data to, is embedded in the firmware. So if security is not part of the design phase of the project, for example, then you are too late. Because if you then come, could you put the syslog server IP in? No, then we have to touch all the RTUs again and upload a new firmware. This costs money, maybe even downtime, and for especially RTUs, they are used in the electrical substations and whatnot. They are sometimes in a place where you cannot just go and connect. Maybe you need plant shutdown or something, because this is usually in a place quite dangerous. So security must be part of the design phase, and this is really, really important. And visibility, it's not just a technical topic, it's actually strategic. Really, you need to, in the design phase, you need to know what do you want to look for, on what systems, obviously focus on the critical ones, and we do not want to have too many SIEM systems, centralize where possible, of course. And some other best practices which I can give you. Just make the most of what you got. Agentless does not mean you get no data. There are still ways to collect data, and just look for what you can actually collect. And even if, for example, active methods are not allowed, use passive methods. At least you get something, because it's still better than having no visibility at all. Normalizing and filtering is quite important in OT to filter out all the noisy traffic. And as you saw with the RTU, using parsers to actually get the interesting data out to actually work with. And the most important thing, and this is also what we faced, the alert logic must be contextualized for OT. I have this example here, a cryptographic certificate expired alert in IT, especially on some external facing server. It might be quite severe, but in OT, this is nonsense. We have so many devices with their own certificate, which you have to accept anyway, so nobody cares about this. But a configuration change of a PLC outside of business hours, or for example, multiple logins out of business hours, or an engineering server doing a download on a PLC during the night. This might be quite interesting, And usually, then you set up an alert, and then you, for example, call the on-call teams. Hey, is there something going on at the moment? Because we saw these logs. But again, here lots of differences between IT and OT. With this, thank you very much, and got ugly logs. Let's talk.
Thank you very much, Philipp. Here is also just
thank you.
So a little bit from the university. Very interesting talk, very valuable insights, and we have a little time left, so are there any questions? Here is one.
Of course, yeah. There are always ways. For example, but the vendors, they are opening up a bit. There are certain vendors that, for example, before they said you can only buy their commercial theme, whatever, nothing else. Now this vendor, for example, they allow that you buy their agent to be installed, and it just sends out syslog to whatever system you have. So at least, yes, you still have to pay something, but we're talking like 5–10% of the usual cost, and then you can have it in your own theme, all this information. But with most vendors, you can talk. There are always ways. For some of them, they say completely no, of course, because they want to sell their commercial solution, obviously. But here I can also tell you, with every new system, and especially if security is involved in the tenders, in the design phase, put it as a requirement, that, for example, they have to send their syslogs. We also had, for example, a tender, new system. I also put it in, and it was accepted. They will put everything in to being forwarded to our log management server. But the things take time, of course.
Are there any other questions? So in the meantime, I have one.
Sure.
As you have talked so much about the ugly and the bad logs, what makes it so attractive for you working in that field?
OT, it's super complex. You see everything from like this modern RTUs to really legacy stuff that you have never seen before, which you don't even know how it works, but somehow it works. It's not even somewhere on the network. Everything is still serial connected. And in OT, you have so many challenges, so many differences compared to IT. So the field is super interesting. And it will be for the next time anyway. So there will nothing change there.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? There is one.
The oldest system? That's a good question. I'm not sure. Looking to my colleague there, what you can actually say. But like every OT vendor, you usually see some pretty old Windows servers. I'm not saying any numbers, but before 2010 at least. Let's say. Those we also get the logs, but again, there's the question, it's super segmented anyway, and it probably has more vulnerabilities than all the other systems combined. So even if you get the logs, what do you do with it, But what we get from quite old systems, the logs as well,
Any other questions?
I have a bit of a more serious one.
Sure. All the different places, because per plant we're talking here, especially in Austria, 60–70. You cannot have this per plant. There's also lots of small plants, and everything is mostly automized anyway. So there are no people sitting there. Everything is automized and digitally being monitored. So centralizing is the only way, because otherwise you cannot manage this.
Internally, some problems sometimes with OT technical teams, like a bit of a pushback, or was there any problem at all?
For us, not really, because usually when we integrate this, we look that it's as little impact to the operational stuff as possible. So if we do some changes, we do it in the plant maintenance anyway. So even if it takes 1 year that we do it, we have time. It's no rush here. Or for example, we do an upgrade project of something. Then we as security are there as well. And look that everything is integrated. So as little impact as possible. And using systems that have no effect on the operational stuff. This is the most important stuff. And of course, we start with a risk-based approach. So most critical plants first, and then you go from there. And you won't connect everything anyway, because at some point you start, you're getting too much logs, which you cannot work with anyway. And if a non-critical system is down for a week, nobody cares. The critical bands are the ones that actually matter.
So, if there are any questions left, I think you will be there afterwards and open for a personal.
Of course.